Okay, so thanks, Louise, and then let us move on to after wonderful sessions today. So let us welcome Alex Jennings. Okay. So Alex, you are in the call.
Hi,
Yeah, hi.
hi,
Sorry for
good.
a 30-minute delay because we have to reschedule little, and apologies for that. And
No
I
problem.
think we have a good time now, Alex. As the new year started, and you are also reviewing upgrading Alchemy platform. So it is the right time to have a discussion. Okay, so now we talk about aligning purchasing process to strategy with Alex Jennings. I think you are the best one to talk about this topic. Okay, so quick introduction to Alex. Alex is global procurement, supply chain, and sales leader with extensive experience in driving business growth and operational efficiency. A proven track record of delivering results through strategic procurement and supply chain optimization. Alex excels in implementing effective supply chain strategies that align with our goals. Alex has a fantastic platform now, Alchemy Networks. I think he will talk more about it, which is something evolving. We wish you good luck, Alex. You can introduce your platform, yourself, and then please go ahead with the topic.
Yeah,
I think this is a unique
absolutely.
topic. Yeah, this is a unique topic. Many people don't know the power of procurement. Okay, I think you are the best one to talk about this topic. Thank you, Alex. Please go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think first of all, thank you for having me. It's 11 o'clock here in London, and I'm excited to be here. It's obviously a bit earlier in Brazil, so thank you, Louise, for stepping in early. I've had a 40-year career, mainly in procurement and supply chain, as you suggested, but I did have 6 years in sales, where I thought I was ready to become a chief procurement officer, and the CEO said, "You're not ready." And I said, "Well, I'm going to leave." And he said, "Well, don't leave. Let me help you develop the skills that you need to be a successful chief procurement officer." And I moved to sales for 6 years, and I ended up selling aluminium beverage cans to some of the world's leading companies: Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Red Bull, Carlsberg, Heineken, AB InBev. And for me, it was like going back to school. It was every day sitting in front of an amazing procurement and supply chain function and learning new techniques and new thoughts and new ideas. And after 6 years, I was invited back to be CPO, a group CPO, and pulled together the procurement function of the business in South America, North America, Europe, and Asia. And he was right, actually. I wasn't ready. And my time in sales was one that enabled me to have the skills, because a lot of the things that you need to do in procurement and in supply chain evolve around selling ideas, selling concepts, selling change, being adaptable. And I became more effective at doing that, having spent my time in sales. Now, I'm just going to share my screen, and Craig, if you can make sure you can see it. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can. Okay, perfect. So today I'm going to be talking about some of the things that we've been through over the last 3 or 4 years from a procurement and supply chain perspective, but also many of these challenges that we faced. We have another level that's down the line, and we need to be effective and prepared for those challenges. But I think it's important to just sit back and remind ourselves what we have been through and the success that we have had as a function, as procurement leaders, as supply chain leaders, in adapting and coping with the things that we had thrown at us. So I'm just going to okay. So we've been through, as I said, this incredible period. Let's just look back. In 2019, we had something hit us that we hadn't really seen, certainly hadn't seen in my lifetime, in my career. And we suddenly had this thing called COVID, and we had to adapt to a significant change in demand, significant change in supply chain, and significant changes in how it affected our workforce, and how we protected our workforce, and how we ensured that our suppliers could keep running. And we were able to do that. But I think one of the things that we had to reimagine is how we coped with risk. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that I was working for a packaging company at the time, and one of the things that you always try to do is to make sure that you have multiple sources for your raw materials through your supply chain. And one of our suppliers that we're working with, an ink supplier, had a very special blue pigment, and we thought we were safe because we had three sources for this special blue pigment that was being used in our products. The problem was that although we had three suppliers of this blue pigment, they were all coming from the same region in India. And when that region got shut down, so did the supply of the blue pigment. So we've had to absolutely rethink some of our risk management strategies as a result of the learnings that we had via COVID. But we were able to keep the business running. I mean, in a packaging company, we were classed as an important supply, because without us, you didn't get medicines, you didn't get PPE, you need to ship stuff in corrugated product. So we kept all 200 sites running throughout COVID across Europe. That sounds quite incredible, which it was, but we also had to keep all of our suppliers running, because you can't make the paper without collecting and recycling the original paper, or cutting down the trees and having pulp to go into your pulper, or without the starch, or without the ink, or without the logistics, or without the drivers. So a huge network. And throughout that period, we were working remotely, and I had to suddenly, instead of being with my team every day physically, I was having to reconnect with them on a virtual basis like this. And I think we learned a lot on how we can work differently during that period. I certainly did. This also created a global shipping crisis, where we were moving products around, and suddenly we had availability issues, but also huge cost issues to cope with. And certainly in Europe, containers coming from China, we saw a rise from $2,000 up to $20,000. Now, that is not a small increase, and suppliers have to talk to you about those changes. It is not something that they can absorb and keep in place. So the importance of connectivity, of partnership, of working together is absolutely essential when it comes to a crisis like that. But again, the learnings from that were incredible in about how you can adapt, but how you can look to predict what things are going to change. And I'm going to come on to predictive tools later on in this presentation. We saw a huge increase in e-commerce. Now, we were the largest supplier of one of the largest companies in the world during that time. And, I think the year before COVID, I mean, they were already growing incredibly, sort of 50% a year. But in the first year of COVID, we saw a 350% increase in their demand for cardboard. And that is not a small increase. They were a large customer already, and suddenly to see demand increase from, a prediction of 200 million square meters to 700 million square meters in a year was difficult to cope with at a time when you're trying to keep your supply chain running. So we had to adapt our business to cope with the growth of e-commerce and a reduction in some of the more traditional supply chains that we'd been used to using. We had a truck driver shortage. I mean, let's not all forget this that we still have some difficulties now in finding drivers. But we had new rules. We had the borders closed. we had truck drivers waiting for 8 hours at borders, and we had isolation where the drivers weren't able to work. And this was incredibly challenging. One of the things that we did during that time was we had digital tracking of all of our trucks that we introduced, so we knew where they were and where they were waiting. We could also see the flow of trucks across every border crossing across Europe, and redirect our product on the basis of where the pinch points were, and trying to avoid them, because when you're working for a packaging company with 200 sites, we were making 1.5 million shipments a year. So again, adaptability and flexibility are key items when you're coping with these kind of things. We have and continue to have a journey towards green energy and the challenge that that brings with it, and it's the right thing to do. But one of the problems was that the change that Europe was certainly going through at the time lacked some of the resilience needed for what was to come. So the direction was correct, the end point was correct, but nowhere in the plan was there a what if scenario that says, what if we can no longer get gas from Russia? So we then had the Russia-Ukraine war thrown at us, which was incredibly difficult to deal with. But immediately, overnight, you've got sanctions, you've got supply chain disruption. And what we did as an organization is we enact like a war room mentality. I'm going to talk about that quite a bit, but you have to immediately start thinking about, how does this affect me? How does this affect my supply chain? How does it affect my ability to deliver product on time and create the right service? What do I need to do in support of my supply chain? And a great example of that, we used to spend 300 million euros a year on starch, and starch comes predominantly, industrial starch comes predominantly from wheat and corn. And Russia were the largest exporter of wheat in the world, and they invaded the world's fifth largest exporter of wheat in the world. So immediately you've got this gap of supply that you've got to deal with. And you start looking at, well, where can you move product around? And one of the problems in Europe we faced was that there are regions in the world where you can't get that product from. For example, North America uses GM modified crop. That's not allowed to be used in Europe. It's not allowed to be used even in the making of paper. So we had to cope with that demand. And some of the things that we did, we had to start thinking laterally. So we started looking at starch made from pea and potato and tapioca. We started looking at synthetic replacements. We started looking at changing the manufacturing process of our paper so that we used less energy and that we used more fiber. Starch gives a strength to paper, but you can replace that by putting more fiber in. And starch becomes the glue that holds the fiber together. The point I'm trying to make is that when there is a crisis, we are the experts in procurement and supply chain at adapting, at change, at flexibility, at challenging ourselves. And some of the most creative things happen in a crisis. So, crises are terrible, but sometimes we do some wonderful things. Then we saw the energy crisis. So this was one of the big drivers of inflation that we saw, as well as the movement of some of the raw materials. I mean, just going back to the raw materials, we started to have governments with protectionism that said, look, we're not going to ship product anymore. India was one that stopped the shipment of some of the wheat and rice from their country to make sure that they were covered, because food is life. And China started to do the same thing, and stock holding. So you have to adapt to changing behavior of governments as well. Now, before the crisis, the average price for the previous 5 years of gas in Europe was 17 euros a therm, and the highest price it had ever reached was 23. In the summer of 2022, because we were no longer getting gas from Russia, certainly not to the size that we were before, and many other factors, we saw gas prices at 357 times. So that's a 2,000% increase on the average for the previous 5 years. And that affects industry. It affects the world because that cost goes into the making of products that has to be shipped to others. And that's one of the reasons why we saw huge inflation. And this also drives electricity because, you know, that the last price of electricity is always the lowest, or is always the highest price. And electricity manufactured from gas needs the gas to go in. It turns into electricity, and then electricity is charged. So there's a spark spread, as it's called, between the gas price and the sale price of the electricity. And this is something we had to cope with. We had to adjust, we had to adapt, and we had to cope with very difficult conversations with both customers and with suppliers because we were all affected by it. And then we have disasters. Okay, so we have an increasing level of disasters, and we have natural disasters that are increasing in intensity. And you know, whilst we can plan better, there's a lot of questions being asked, for example, in Los Angeles at the moment about what could have been done differently. But the fact is, we're seeing more of this, and we need to adjust and we need to adapt. So this is what we've been through, and you know, whilst it's been a very difficult time, it is appropriate for us to celebrate what we have all done because we got through it somehow. Little more grey, little less hair, some of us, but we got through it. And a lot of this drove inflation, and you know, those that were best hit really saw inflation of kind of 10-15%. I know in places like Japan they managed it much better, but then there are also countries where their product base or their spend as a country was more affected by certain goods that saw above 200%. And these are company changing and life changing for people, and we are still adapting to, and we are still in a position where people are unhappy with the effect that it has had on their lives. And even today, we're seeing costly detours. You know, the Suez Canal and the attacks that are going on there, and the extra day shipping and the extra cost of that, and the extra fuel of that. We're still having to adjust and adapt. Now, I'm now going to go through some of the things that I see that we still face, and some of the things that I think we can do to be better at managing and to prepare. And the first one is demand volatility. So we've always had unpredictable consumer behavior due to changes in their economic situation, shifting trends, geopolitical events, and wars. That's not new, but the intensity of them, because we have now global supply chains, the ripple effect of that volatility goes through your supply chain very quickly, much more quickly than it used to. And I think we need to prepare better for this. And one of the things that we should be doing is investing in demand forecasting. Okay, so this is not an Excel spreadsheet. This is a point where we can establish connectivity with our customers, connectivity with our suppliers, transparency to a level that we are sharing what sits within our supply chain, and try to adjust and affect our requirements. And one of the things that I saw during COVID was an incredible increase in stock holding. And sadly, the bullwhip effect of that, and I'm going to come on to that, was that when that starts to come off because demand slows, you see a doubling effect on the economy because you're seeing a reduced consumer demand, but you also see destocking, and that's what we saw during 23 and early 24. But it's important that we build resilience into our supply chains, and we build adaptability and flexibility so that when you see these changes, you're ready for them. If it's good news, you're ready for it. If it's bad news, you're capable of adjusting. When it comes to the disruptions that I talked about already, these are not going to change, I'm afraid, and we need to be ready. And when I talked about the Ukraine crisis and our wheat, you know, we absolutely set up a war room, and we had the walls plastered with ideas and concepts and ownership. And I think when you're managing a project like that, you need absolute ownership, and we gave that to our people, and we entrusted our people, and they own those projects. And extreme ownership is really the way through to manage your contingency plans. So having contingency plans ready is important, but how you enact them when something happens is absolutely key to managing resilience. We also saw labour shortages, and sadly, we still have some labour shortage of some critical skill sets, and our companies own the solution. I think, you know, some of the things that we need to look at is how do we improve employee retention? How do we put people first? How do we train people to fill those skill gaps? How do we make the place that we work the most wonderful place to work so that people don't leave for the place down the road? You know, people join companies, they leave bad cultures, they leave bad managers. So we need to be investing so that our companies, so that our teams are able to cope with the shortages, because how you attract people is the first thing, but how you retain that talent is one of the key skills that I think people lack. And I read a really fantastic book recently called Moments, and it's exactly right. When you join a new company, when you join a new team, those first few days are absolutely key to how you feel about that company and how you will continue to feel about that company moving forward. Imagine joining that organization and then being told to, okay, for the next couple of days, we're a bit busy. Go and sit over there. There's your desk, lovely desk. Here's a pile of our policies. Familiarize yourself with those policies. I mean, I can't think of anything worse, to be honest, than that. So let's think about how we engage with those people and ensure that our team are the right ones. But also think about, are we doing everything that's right? So are there things that we can stop doing? Are there things that we can replace with RPAs or automation? And stop doing stuff that just doesn't bring value. You know, if you're having a meeting with 30 people in a room, if 24 people never speak, do they need to be there? Is there another way of sharing that? Do you have a skill shortage, or do you have an over utilized workforce? I'm just challenging everybody there to think about that. Transportation and logistics constraints. I think one of the things that it is absolutely key is to partner with, from a procurement perspective, to partner with reliable logistics providers, efficient logistics providers, professional logistics providers. Invest in real-time tracking, because this is not an area to save money on a piece price, you know, because the impact on your service, on your supply chain, on your efficiency, on your effectiveness, there is far more money to be saved in effective supply chain and logistics management than $2 off the price of a route. Okay, it is efficiency and effectiveness that drives supply chains. It's about connecting supply chains. Martin Christopher in 1999 started talking about how companies don't compete anymore. It is supply chains, and he was right. You know, to be effective as an organization, then you need to partner with professional organizations to ship your product, to connect, to look at trends, to look at opportunities, to open yourself to ideas about how you can change. And this is also important from a sustainability perspective. Every mile that your truck or your ship moves that isn't full, that is running empty, um, is bad for the environment. So how do we stop that happening? You know, if your demand is, so the Japanese call it heijunka, which is smooth production. So when I worked at Toyota, we would make the same amount of cars every single day without fail, same amount of cars. And everybody knew that. And it became a smooth process for everybody to feed into. But if you're in a position where you're working for a company where you need 7 trucks, 24 trucks, 2 trucks, 9 trucks, no, not 9, I need 18. No, I need 7. When you have that, it's impossible for a logistics company to cope with that and to be efficient and effective. And it's exactly the same in your personal life. If you think about, I need a taxi now to go to the train station, there is a cost for them to come here and to take me. But if I phone them up and say, next Wednesday, I need a car to take me to the train station, then they can think about trying to find some work to see if there is someone going to be at the train station at that time to bring back to the same location and use the car twice and optimize that supply chain. It is exactly the same in logistics. The more visibility, transparency, and regulated supply we have, the easier it is to remove waste. That's where the money is. The money is in the waste, not in whether you're paying your driver $12 an hour or $13 an hour. The money is in the waste. Technology. I love technology. I wouldn't say I'm a leader in this space, but I think we do need to look at where technology can assist us, not to take over, but to be supportive. That where we can use it to help our processes. I've always talked, and my business partner Harold Hendricks has always talked about a four-sided triangle. When you bring in technology and you think that's going to solve all your problems, it fails. What you need to do is to think about what is the process that I need to run. You then need to look at, okay, so I have this process. This is the process that works for my business. What is the technology that is complementary to that process that I have? You then need to look at your organizational development, capability, structure, and that supports. And all of that should be underpinned in the middle by governance, holding it together, making sure that you are effective in how you're running things. So think of technology as your supporter, not as your controller. And I think as long as you do that, you'll be effective. You know, when you look at AI, it is going to change a lot of things. But actually, when you look at companies' spend at the moment and the use of AI, supply chain and procurement is way down the list. Their focus is at the other side at the moment, at marketing and at sales and at innovation. It's not with us. It will come, it's not with us. And also, when you think about how companies are reacting to AI, 60% of organizations are building an AI tool in-house because they are scared of AI grabbing their material and it becoming exposed to the wider world. So they're using and developing in-house. But the other thing that they are doing is 36% of them are using an external provider to help them build an AI tool in-house. Only 4% are using an off-the-shelf product. So just think about that. There is a fear there. When it comes to our supply chains and environmental regulations, although there is a mood change in the world, the direction of travel in this is the same, and we need to make sure that we are using sustainable practices and circular supply chains to drive what we're doing. So none of that is going away, despite the mood music. However, I read some pretty sad news, as well as the Americans stepping away from the Paris Accord. 41% of CEOs, to some extent, stepped back from some of their commitments that they had made previously last year. So there is a mood music change, but I do think it will come back, because we need to do things. Cyber risks. Every time we connect with a supplier, with a partner, we need to think about what is the risk that we face associated with this. In the industry there I was before, there was an attack on the paper industry, and I know that 3 global packaging companies in North America were taken down and reported significant impacts on this as a result of cyber. So every time there's a connection, you're opening a door to an unfriendly coming in and messing around with your data, and that is not something that you want to be involved with. Inventory management. The bullwhip effect that we saw after after COVID was quite incredible. So we saw this massive increase in inventory because we had supply chain disruption, we had driver issues, we had shipping issues. So almost the whole supply chain put inventory in place. So everyone was holding more. The manufacturers, the warehousing, the stockholders, and then the retailers. The problem you found is that when we started to have a bit of a hit on demand during 2023, we saw demand go down. I'm just going to use an example of a supermarket. The demand started to go down from the consumer. The supermarket looked at their supply chain and their warehouses and said, wow, we've got too much of this product. We need to destock. So you saw the reduction from the consumer and a reduction in their inventory. So the demand was down by 2x. That then fed to the FMCG manufacturer of let's say a washing powder, and the washing powder manufacturer also had a lot of product in their inventory. So they saw the reduction from the consumer and from the retailer and from the distributor, and they started to destock themselves. And then you get to the packaging company, who were also holding inventory. So by the time you get to the raw material supplier, they're seeing a 5x reduction in demand because of what has happened at the consumer's end. So how we manage this, how we predict, how we challenge ourselves to make sure that we are running tight is absolutely key, and it's a real skill. Ethical sourcing. This is something that needs to be a red line for us all. There are still reported over 60 million people in modern day slavery around the world, and we need to challenge ourselves, and we need to make sure that we are thinking about what is happening in our supply chain, and we need to be thinking about where is the cobalt coming from and where is the lithium coming from. Another example, photovoltaics. So we see these fantastic celebrations of all of these solar panels being put on buildings and in fields, and it is great news. It is, from a green perspective, it's great news. However, 45% of some of the raw materials that go into those, 45% are coming from Jiaojing, which is where the Uyghurs are being used in modern day slavery. And I think the challenge that we have is no one's talking about that. No one is challenging the fact that we have 45% of those raw materials. So the green revolution in that area is in effect being built on slavery. So we just need to sit back and think about what's going on. Rising costs. Inflation has died, but it's coming back a little bit. We're seeing a small tick up. And I think I'm going to be talking about tariffs shortly, but It's another thing that we're going to have to manage again and become more effective in how we optimize our operations, reduce waste, and negotiate long-term contracts that have a kind of a mutuality to them. There is no point in having a low-cost supplier if that supplier dies. You need to have resilience in your supply chain. You need to be working with your suppliers. And then we have these trends of globalization, and we have regionalization and a move back. And part of this is going to be driven even faster because of tariffs. But we see our supply chain adapting all the time. And we need to be thinking about, what does this mean to us? What does it mean to the flow? What does it mean to the challenge of raw materials? How is it going to affect shipping? How is that going to affect my cost? Can I budget for that? Can I predict that? Can I buy forward? Can I pay forward? Can I use tools to enable me to buy my shipping costs forward, to protect me from that? I used to be the largest buyer of aluminium in the world, and you know, during a 3-year period, you would regularly see aluminium at $1,500 and at $3,600. That is not something that you can let float when you are making 65 billion aluminium beverage cans a year. So you have to manage that, and you have to be effective. And we used hedging techniques to enable us to manage that. That's a whole other subject that I would love to talk about. Let's talk about tariffs. Now, a lot changed last Monday, and you know, the new regime in North America is going to bring a lot of good, I think, for North America, but it's also going to challenge supply chains, and it's going to challenge how we deal with each other. And we don't know at the moment whether there is going to be a blanket 10% on everything, when there is going to be targeted on an industry where an industry will face 50%, whether there is going to be punitive actions on some countries, like their challenge on Canada and on Panama and on Mexico. But what is absolutely clear is that we need to be planning for it. And if you're not already planning for it, you're probably already too late. So this is one of the biggest things that is going to affect us over time, because if suddenly tariffs are put on, then absolutely we're going to see punitive tariffs put on by other organizations back onto the states, and we're then going to put counter tariffs. And look, we talk about COP30 at the end of the year in Brazil. Nobody's going to be talking to anybody by the end of it, so we may as well cancel it and save the carbon from the lack of flights. But we are going to see increased costs, and you might not see it directly from your supplier, but your supplier's supplier and your supplier's supplier's supplier may be getting their products from regions that are suddenly going to have a big tariff slapped on them. So some of the things that we need to look at is, it is going to make us have to reconfigure our supply chains very quickly. And therefore, whenever you reconfigure, you put waste into it. So there's reconfigure and adapt and flexibility and change and challenge. Because if we change quickly, then you will absolutely build waste into your supply chain. So it doesn't stop there. You have to start from day one thinking about change and change and change, and being this continual cycle of adaptation. You need to make sure that we can manage the regulatory complexity that's going to come from this, because it's not just a charge. There is very different approach when it comes to how you manage the schedules, how you manage the exemptions, how you code. It's going to bring uncertainty and volatility, some of the things that we talked about that we've been coping with already, and it may well affect your competitiveness. And therefore, what are you going to do to adapt? I've listed a couple of things here that I think are items that we should be considering. We need to be diversifying our sourcing, or at least thinking about what are alternative thoughts to where we can get the product now. And honestly, we should already be doing it, because first mover advantage on this is going to be key. So if a sudden tariff increase is put onto a certain product from a certain region, if you're not doing it, your competitors are. So they're already speaking to alternative suppliers. and there is not unlimited demand. So if you can move your product from supplier A or region A to supplier B or region B, then you need to be thinking about that now. Because if not, the capacity is already gone, and you're going to be the one that's left with the supply from the existing region with a big tariff on top of it. And these are going to be, some of it is posturing, some of it is negotiation, but some of it will absolutely happen because it happened last time, and they are serious this time about reappointing North America as a power. And I think other regions will be doing the same. So the tariff and counter tariff is absolutely going to be something we need to manage. We need to thinking about, can we relocate production or adjust? Where I used to work, we had 300 manufacturing sites, and you have flexibility. You can grow this one and shrink this one, move this product here, move that product there. And how do you need to be optimizing your supply chain with tariffs on top. So we all have tools. We use companies like Optilogic that can optimize our supply chain. But if you suddenly put on top of that a complexity of tariffs, then you're going to get a different picture. Before it will say your optimized supply chain will look like this. Boom. These warehouses should be here. Boom. All of a sudden, if you change that pattern, if you change the cost structure, if you add in new tariffs, then that pattern looks different. So how do you adapt and how do you adjust and how do you build the flexibility into it? Others we've got in here use cost modeling, build inventory, engage in advocacy. I'm sure they're going to share this presentation with you afterwards. One of the other things I think that it's important that we do, and one of the reasons, we launched the Alchemy Network in April last year. Tell your friends, it's important. The Alchemy Network is for procurement, supply chain, and sustainability professionals. It's not for anybody else. The Alchemy Network is to connect professionals because we believe in AI, but we also believe in CI, and CI is community intelligence, stronger together. It is a free platform. Nobody pays anything. Some of our partners pay something, but none of our members pay anything. Think LinkedIn, but better. We have no algorithm. We don't hide you. If you post, if you share, then it is on there. It is app based. So 60% of our members are using it through the app. When I'm at home, I use it through Chrome, and you can translate to 150 languages. Yeah, we have the app version as well. Some of the things you can learn from partners, boost your personal growth. We probably have about 6 or 7 live shows a week now. So really, and they're all free. So we had Carney this week. We have Ethical Procurement Edge on Monday. We have the University of Maastricht on Monday next week. Lots of things that you can learn from. We have recruiters on there. You can collaborate globally. You can ask questions. But there's also the chance to give back through our foundation, which is something I'm proud of. Our membership, we have members in 170 countries, and we have many partners and a growing level of partners. University of Nottingham are doing some work with us on slavery. They are experts in using satellite technology to look at where people and companies are doing things that are inappropriate, and working with NGOs to try and fix it. So that's who we are. There's a QR code there that you can use that'll take you to Apple or Google to download the app. But honestly, it's for you. It's your community. If you're not already a member, I encourage you to be so. But also you can become an ambassador by inviting people that you're also connected with, because the more knowledge we have on there, the stronger we are, and the more we can share. So Sheikh, I wanted to just explain a little bit about what I've been doing. I had retired 2 years
Please.
ago. I'd stopped working 2 years ago, and I decided, no, I'm not done. So we built the Alchemy Network for everybody. So yeah, I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to see if there's any questions. Okay, Sheikh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think
Okay,
it's
good.
wonderful platform, Alchemy. Okay, so I just had look at it and joined recently. So it's really wonderful. You made it very simple and straightforward. I wish you good luck, Alex. Okay, it's a really
Thank you.
decent platform for everybody,
And it's free.
and it's free, and I think it's unique for supply chain managers, and it is for everybody in reality. But it is definitely a very valuable platform for supply chain guys.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Do you have any questions in the chat, Sheikh? I think I saw
There are,
one come through, but I
uh,
couldn't read it.
yeah, we have a couple of questions. I just posted it.
Okay.
Now, one question I got it from other channel is designing supply chain should be aligned to the strategy as it is a competitive advantage. Can you give how you did for your organization? Any real time scenarios? Mhm.
Sorry, which question was that? Sorry. The design supply chain.
Design supply chain should be aligned to the business strategy. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I think I'll go back to my time when I was at the aluminium beverage can company. So when you think about um, aluminium beverage cans, when you make them, you're shipping air. Okay, so a can is a cylinder. You would get about 200,000 in a truck, or 120,000, depends on the size. But you're shipping air, so you need to be close to your customers when you are oh, that you've got that much logistics. I mean, I used to spend 500 million on logistics. So we adapted and adjusted. So there are two things that you need to do. So I was also responsible for planning and inventory management and supply chain when I was there. And I think one of the things we did, so but for large customers like Coca-Cola and Red Bull, we built our manufacturing site next door, and the cans went through the wall. So they said we need to fill this can. We made the can, it went through the wall. The slight problem that we had is that the industry is heavily capitally intensive, and due to the margins and cost levels, despite making 65 billion a year, um, you need to run those plants all year. So you optimize when you're at around 96% OE. So that's 24/7, 96% of the year. Now, the problem for that is that the demand for the products is not flat. So we drink more in the summer. And interestingly, we had this pattern of inventory management where in November we would start talking to our suppliers about and our customers about increasing our inventory of finished product in November for the following summer. And we would build that inventory until about April. And then sometime towards the end of April in Europe, we would see a point when demand would be greater than our ability to supply. So we would enter the summer normally with about 2.5 billion cans on the floor. And then the end point when it starts to cross again is sometime in September. And by the end of September, you're down at around 700 million. Now, that still sounds like a lot. But if you think about a product like Red Bull, so you have Red Bull, you think, okay, well, it's only 6 products. Okay, so it's 6 products. Okay, but then you have to multiply 6 by 8 different can sizes. So it's 6 times 8. Then you have to multiply that by 196 countries that they sell in. So it's 96 different patterns, writing on the can. So it's 6 times 8 times 196. That's just one customer. The plethora of products that somebody like a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi or an AG bar has means that that's not a lot of inventory and how you manage that. The other problem is working with marketing organizations. So, for example, if Pepsi want to run a campaign in the summer with Beyonce on, then you've got to make those cans earlier on, but you can't announce it. It has to be secret. But if they want to do a a celebration of the winners of the World Cup, then you can't make those cans until you know who's won the World Cup. So you need flexibility and agility in there as well. So that's an example. Another example is when I was at Toyota, and none of our suppliers delivered. We collected every product. We sent them their schedules. They made the products. We had returnable packaging with everybody, and we had a logistics function that went to every single supplier, collected on milk runs, and then brought it into the plant. And I worked with some really brilliant people who were pure mathematicians back then. And a lot of logistics is about maths. A lot of our optimization is about maths. It's algorithms. It is asking a question. It's getting an answer. And one of the things that we did that I always love about supply chain, I've taken this throughout my career, is taking zero-based planning. So we put into our plan, we said, okay, if we had no constraints at all, and we had pure logistics, what is the optimum cost that we could run this with? And then we started to build back from that and started to challenge ourselves on, okay, so there's an additional cost because of that. What can we do? So an example, on Friday nights in Birmingham, where our glass came from, Pilkington used to close. So we couldn't collect after a certain time, but we were running 24/7. So we didn't want to change our procedure. That was costing us nearly £800,000 a year in extra logistics costs because we're having to adapt and challenge our supply chain. So we went to Pilkington and we said, look, we don't need you to run on a Friday night, but you've got a security guard anyway. Could we still come on a Friday night and collect? We'll send a driver that can drive his own forklift truck, and he will load the vehicle and then deliver to us. And yeah, they put on extra shifts, and I think the cost of doing that was around £100,000 a year, but the saving was 800,000. So sometimes you learn things about your supply chain by doing this kind of because we tend to accept things. When you plan, you say, well, that customer only likes this, and that customer only does this, and that supplier can only do that. But if you step back from that and reassign yourself and say, okay, look, okay, if it was different, what's the saving? Because sometimes the supplier or customer only does that because that's what they've always done. And it was a conversation that somebody had in 1997, and Fred said this, and it's become a myth that you've always lived with. So I think supply chain and cost management is always about challenging ourselves. Sorry, I spoke for a long time there.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So there is one more question. Maybe you can take it up. So, total cost of ownership is something missed in many organizations, especially for raw material procurement. The purchasing managers have a short sight, only they focus on cost of the products. Okay. So what is your advice for the organizations, Alex?
Okay. So I've got, I want to show you an example here. I'm going to show you an example. So this is my strategy paper, okay, for aluminium from 2013. All right. This is 303 pages long. Now, the reason for that is because if you're the largest buyer of aluminium, you need to understand what is happening in every industry. So if the automotive industry are starting to increase their demand on aluminium because of the need to become more efficient and more effective, it started with the A8 with Audi, then A6, then A4. You need to understand what is the impact on your global supply chain for that. Everything we buy, and actually go back to, if you think about the last 15 slides that I've just talked about, if you just buy on cost, then you can kiss goodbye every solution that you have in there. You need to choose the right partners, the right product, the right service. You need to understand that if we have a resilience issue, how is it going to be affected? If you're going to have a change in government or a supply chain issue, is it going to be affected? And right first time was something that I learned at Toyota. They built cars in a different way, and they looked absolutely at total cost of management. So, but they also built resilience into their supply chain and worked with the suppliers to make the product effective. But there's no point in buying a product that is cheap that's going to mean your car breaks down. It ruins your whole business. And one of the reasons why Toyota is used in hard to get to places is because people trust them. They are not going to break down on you. In the middle of Australia, you want to be in a Toyota Hilux because it's not going to break down on you, or a Land Cruiser or something like that. 99%. Back in the 90s, 99% of the cars that went through Toyota were one touch. At the end of the car, they were good and ready to go for the customer. So that was their approach. We make it right first time, and their recruitment was the same. Get it right first time. A company like Jaguar back then, also producing a high quality car, but 99% of their cars went through the paint hospital. So at the end of the line, 99% of them were deemed not ready for the client. There's always more than one way of approaching these things, and my view is the more we train, the more we talk, the more we value, the more we share about the importance of high quality total cost of ownership, then we get to the right result. The problem sometimes, though, isn't the procurement people, it is the senior leadership of companies putting unrealistic targets on procurement companies about cost reduction, they call it. But we need to be measuring value. And sometimes it's better for us to increase the cost of a product and a raw material if it means that the line goes faster. So we used to think about products in supply chains. So you need to think about, if you think about the front end of a can maker, you need to think about how do you interact the machine with the lubricant, with the tooling, with the aluminium, with the former. Okay. Now, if you change any one of those, it will have a negative impact on the others. Sometimes it's more effective to buy a more expensive oil than it is trying to, because you can take cost out of the aluminium. And I'm going to give you a great example now. So a friend of mine used to work at actionable, and again in the early 2000s, and they were asked to develop a paint for a ship that would mean that the maintenance of the ship, of an oil tanker, would only have to be taken out of the water every 2 years instead of every 1 year. And what they did was that they developed this paint that meant that barnacles would not attach themselves to it. And they were able to achieve the result of the tankers only being able to be taken out every 2 years. The side effect of that paint was that it made the tanker glide through the water more effectively and reduced the diesel needed to power the ship by almost 10%. Now that's a paint. Now, if you can reduce your diesel in an oil tanker through a paint, you should be able to pay whatever you want for that paint. The value is beyond any chart that you could produce. So this is not about price, and procurement people that are forced to buy on price need to go on a few lessons.
Fantastic. Yeah. So let's have a final thoughts, Alex. Would you? I don't mind if you can spend a couple of minutes explaining alchemy. Okay, I don't mind. Yeah. So you can just a quick brief because it's very important. And also,
Okay.
there is one more question from Louis. Uh, uh, Louis says that fantastic topic. I'm impressed with the complexity. Uh, and how creative in supply chain team have to be. Are you using any AI tool to make decisions faster and secure? If so, what types? That's what the
Yeah.
question.
Okay. So look, I retired 2 years ago. So my I'm not really involved in AI. However, on the Alchemy Network, we are going to be working with an Indian company called UST. UST are going to be making available an AI tool that they are developing that is going to be free for people to play with. All they ask is that you put your data with it and you get some answers, but they just want some feedback. So that's maybe something that we should have a look at. I mean, if you want, I can if you want, I can share the network for 5-10 minutes. But if what would you like me to do that? Do you have time or
3-4 minutes.
okay,
Yes, try to do that.
3 more minutes? Okay, I will show you the Alchemy Network, and as I said, it is free. So we have our top members here. So you can see these are our members, but we have various different categories of members that you can find. You can see we have the top members. We have members near you. So near you, this will bring up this young man, Harry Jennings. He is a procurement graduate at Jaguar Land Rover, and I know he's near me because it's my youngest son. So he still works from home. We have our ambassadors. You become an ambassador by inviting other people. So this is my personal link, which I will copy and I will put into into the chat here. So if anybody wants to join, they can absolutely do that. But that's what we do. We also have streaks. So we only launched this week. So you can see I've been on 4 days in a row. So you can see we have our feed, which is like LinkedIn. So our feed has all the material that everybody has posted on any topic. But we also have events. So these are live events. On Monday, we have Ethical Procurement Edge, University of Maastricht, Super Tim. We have this wonderful guy, VJ, who's talking about Power BI. We have Payment on Time. We have lots of things coming up. But we also have our in our Alchemy Live section, we have our replays. So all of the shows that we have. So this is Carney from Tuesday, the negotiation training with Charlotte Punabar Winkelmeyer. She's a senior partner. All of that is in here. Procurement Says No, all of their podcasts, they're all live and in here that you can go back and have a look. We have our Expert Insights Hub, which is where we share material from our partners, the likes of Carney, Ecovadis. We have our Tech Insights Hub, which is where you have information about technology and AI. We have our Business Lounge, where you can post material on procurement, on supply chain, and on sustainability. And we have our Social Cafe, where you can do some research. But also we have a powerful tool that means that if you go to the top here and you search, let's just search logistics, it will come up with every article and also people that anybody has posted. I'm just going to change it from people to posts. It'll come up with any article that anybody has posted that has anything to do with logistics. So you don't have to go back and if you missed it this week and lost it, then you can only read on a topic. But also, if you go, this is the web version, so I'm going to now change it to Arabic. You can see the navigation on the left is in Arabic. All of the articles are in Arabic. And if I open the article, it will translate it to Arabic. And just so as you know, it's not a fluke, I'm just going to change it from Arabic to change it to Hindi. There we go. Hindi, translate. It's now in Hindi. So you can enjoy the material in your own language. So yeah, that's a real whistle-stop tour, but it's free for everybody. Please enjoy the platform, and the more you use it, the more you're going to get from it. But we want to be the place that replaces LinkedIn. So why not?
Fantastic. So all the best to you, Alex, and for
Thank
you
you very
and
much.
for your team. and your platform. So good luck to you. And I have
Thank
joined
you.
already, and it's yeah.
And yeah, thank you. And to you. And we love what you do. So you know, we want to stay connected with you. And I think that there is a mutuality here that means that you know, we can support each other. But thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you.
It's something I'm very passionate about. I think you can hear the passion in my voice.
Indeed.
And Louise, thank you for your comments. I've followed you for a long time, so I love your work. So thank you very much. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.